Have you ever been all together on stage?
The same time?
No.
Never. Same time? Yeah. No.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
First
time,
First
yeah.
collide.
First time.
Yeah.
So when we'll go off that stage here, we'll create a new super framework. You all know that.
Yep.
Yeah. So get ready. Right. It will be released on NPM and JSR. Whatever will be announced over there. Doesn't matter. Now, of course it's amazing. But before, who of you knows these people here? Can you briefly show? Okay, let's try the other way around. Who does have no idea of anybody here? Okay, great. Then let's do a small introduction round just so everybody is aware what you signed up for here. And yeah, let's start right away.
Sure. My name's Ryan Carniato. Creator of the JavaScript framework, SolidJS. Signals, if you've heard of them, that's a big part of my work. And I like long walks on the beach.
Nice.
Sweet. Okay.
So I'm Shai Reznik. I'm part of the Qwik team. I also run Hires.io, consulting and courses and all that stuff. And I'm also do improv and salsa dancing and all that stuff. Like we're sharing. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks.
I'm Daniel Roe. I lead the Nuxt team. Nuxt is a meta framework for building web apps built on Vue. I am a full-time open source maintainer and also have a few other projects as well, like Fontaine and Magic Regex. I live in Edinburgh and I have an extremely affectionate cat who prevents me from getting any work done as far as I can tell.
Okay. My name is Anthony. Sorry. My name is Anthony Fu, and I'm the coding member of Vue, Vite, and Nuxt. And I also create a few open source projects, like VTest, SlideDiff, Uno CSS, if you heard about it. And I'm working at Nuxt Lab full-time on open source and on the framework team, Nuxt framework team. And it's my great pleasure to work with Daniel and Alex, and also, of course, the great open source community of us. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Minko. I work on Angular at Google, where I'm the product lead. And I love doing open source. I have a couple of open source linters in Go, in JavaScript, and other fun stuff on GitHub.
Amazing, yeah. And I'm the most irrelevant person here because I'm just asking the question and let the experts talk. So my name is Alex. As Anthony said, I'm also on the Nuxt team, but as said, that's not really relevant for this panel. They are the person to speak, right? The people to speak. So after you know everybody, I'm more than sure you have lots of burning questions here. And if you have something that's really important, then ask them afterwards, because here's a big list of things. We only have an hour. I'm very sorry. But we'll start right away. We start with something very recent. Who of you folks over here is a big fan of PWAs? Yeah? Hands up when I say, yeah, a few. Okay, a little bit. And as we are in the EU, you all know what's happening right now of Apple trying to kill PWAs. I want to know what your take on not only the whole situation, but maybe also the future of PWAs is. What do you think?
That's a loaded question.
That's a tricky one. I mean, my experience with PWAs might be a little bit limited, although I was working for a company where our main product we were trying to make was a PWA, and this is back in 2018. I thought we'd be getting there, and it took 4 years for Apple to deliver notifications properly. And by that time, I wasn't working at the company anymore. So in some ways, I'm like not surprised we are where we're at. It's tricky. For a while, I know the web, and especially like the Chrome team and stuff, were really dedicated to making PWAs happen. I haven't heard as much conversation recently, so I don't know if people have more recent experience, but it feels like the web was a platform made for everyone, and like the potential of using PWAs as this bridge, because web's one of the easiest platforms to develop for, was a real opportunity. So putting restrictions on being able to do that seems worrisome.
Yeah, it reminds me of, so I was developing in Flex back in the day, and Steve Jobs decided to kill Flash on the iPhone, and then all of us moved to the JavaScript back again and figuring out how do we do stuff? We don't have types, right? But back then, Flash was a proprietary thing from Adobe, and made sense because Apple message was bet on the web, right, on HTML5, and or like that future, and like and the Flash is too slow and stuff. Now it's interesting because it's kind of like don't bet on the open web or on the open standards and stuff like that. I'm not really an expert on that, and don't know what like the future of like these technologies going to be, but maybe Minko knows more about that because he's from Google and he knows everybody. So yeah.
Should we go in a row, or we are going to
wherever
do
you want? It's free
spiral?
discussion.
A spiral.
Go ahead. Talk as you feel.
I was thinking about PWAs. Now, definitely it's unfortunate that we will not be able to install PWAs on like iOS. Also, at the same time, PWAs, they introduce so many cool ideas and APIs to the web that are here to stay, like service workers. Like app cached evolved into service workers. That is better. We also have this more progressive loading of applications with something like an app shell that could be considered somewhat of an inspiration for even like maybe island architecture to an extent, just because we have parts of the page that appear quickly and everything else like pops up after that with the app shell. So I'm worried on one side that legislations and some like big ideas of certain companies could impact the web in a negative way, but also at the same time, PWA's ideas are going to continue being actively used in the web in the future. I'll pass it to you now.
Okay, yeah. Just to be clear, that I didn't raise my hand because I didn't hear the question. So yeah, I'm actually a fan. Yeah. So I'm the one that starts the project like Vite plugin PWA, and so I actually really looking into the PWA stuff. It's like I think that's web we know is a very good platform that's open and also like very universal. It can work anywhere. So, but like also like because like the default web is in a sandbox and with a limited capability compared to the native apps, but I think that's for my efficiency consideration. It's like we don't want to, but I'm a one man. Like I cannot build like 3 different apps or different platform, right? So I will definitely go first with web. So I think PWA is a great idea to get started with, and so yeah, I don't know. I kind of have a very mixed feeling about this Apple stuff because like in iOS it's already not easy to do so. You need to instruct users in a very weird way to add the PWA. But yeah, so I hope this can get better soon because these things probably still in progress, and yeah, we'll see.
I mean, I think philosophically I'm absolutely 100% in favor of openness. And the open web is a big part of that. So I don't think it's a morally neutral concept. What about the technical details? I think the core philosophy of making these things available is a really important one. And on that, I would say this isn't a story that's done. We are observing things unfolding. So there is an EU ruling, there's a response from Apple, which is honestly a terrible response. And it's been justified with a number of justifications, which I consider to be unreasonable, and a bit of a mockery of the thing. And I would expect we'll see a response from the EU. I would also really like to see a response from people, developers, people we know. We're able to inform and tell people about what is actually going on and what is at stake. Because that kind of public response will make a big difference, and it will be interesting to see how things then proceed. But I mean, when you consider that basically removing the possibility of PWAs actually makes a lot of things opaque. Look at the launch, for example, of, I think Threads might be a good example, the Meta-based Twitter replacement. And because it was released as app only, it was impossible to access anywhere but on a phone. That's an interesting thing. It would be a shame if that kind of opacity continued, like to take away access to people from new websites and platforms and technologies. So that's my spicy take.
I don't think it's that spicy, actually. I
not
think
that
we all agree here that like PWAs are important and they're part of a web, and we want to see them grow more and not being restricted. Also, I think there's a petition to sign, and I think it's important also for public figures like you, mostly, and others out there to raise their voice about that, because it's an important topic that affects all of us. Coming from a very heavy question from the start to something that's not less interesting for sure. While we stay at the web as it is right now, I'll come with a very simple yes/no question. We can go that right around. And we all know the web is changing every day, and we have a big part of this conference program about AI. So we'll start with, will AI cost you all the job? Very simple yes or no.
No.
It depends.
Classic program,
right?
Yeah.
No.
Lost my job, right?
Will it cost you your job?
AI.
Cost. Sorry.
Will AI cost you your job?
No, I think, yeah.
No.
No. Okay. It depends on will be interesting, but for what it's worth, I asked this.
It will lose my current job, but my job will morph, right?
Change, yeah. That's the thing. We are programmers in the end. We tell a machine what to do, and if we write a prompt in an AI, we also anyway. The most interesting question with that is not more like, okay, will you all also lose your job tomorrow and next 10 years? I see a few people nodding here like, oh yeah, no. It's more interesting like, how will web development shape with AI in its place? Because right now it's used as assistive technology. I've seen people spawning up frameworks component from AI in like a meetup talk. Yeah, looking at some people here. And I would wonder, what do you think? How will AI influence the web, maybe content-wise, but also the work as a developer?
Should we go one by one?
No, please, feel free to discuss that. Whoever wants to go for it.
Okay.
I have a few thoughts. I see how it could help in two different ways. One of them is to improve our developer experience a little bit by automating the boring stuff, like scaffolding, for example, or figuring out some things for us. Back in the day, I was doing an exploration of predictive prefetching, and I see AI really helping us with we have very finely grained code loading, let's say, and AI could help us to be smart about loading this code. Let's say we run a model on the edge, and it tells us, oh, these chunks will work really well together. Maybe I can just combine them and ship them to the client. This would be a great use case. And so that's one of them, improving our developer experience. And the other one is improving user experience, just by making our apps smarter, using different AI SDKs.
Yeah. So in my talk, I touched it briefly. I talked about it briefly because I didn't have time left. But
Sorry about that.
no, it's okay. It was my fault. I forgot the internet. So Minko has been doing great things ever since a few years ago, right? About the predictive prefetching, analyzing user analytics to feed to a model and analyzing that. And recently, what I shared is can we do that for other stuff? Because I think as developers, what we love to do is to create. We are creators, right? We like to think about, okay, this component will be here and that, and how the user experience will be, and all that stuff, right? As a front-end developers or full stack and such. And there are a lot of manual tasks that we don't like to do, and that's what I call manual optimization of stuff, because the users are sad because of the slow loading times and all that stuff. So that's one aspect that AI could do. But I envision a future where we have an AI team member that can analyze maybe the usages anonymously of real users, and could figure out how to write the tests for us and use those tests as the testing ground for refactoring our code to be a more developer-friendly code, and know which parts could be totally removed because they are not even used, do A/B testing automatically. All the stuff that we need to do manually these days, it could do, and that's what I call automatic optimization. And that's, I think, will be a big part of our future, which we started in Qwik with the performance optimization or automatic optimization, And I think it's great to do it on a function level, like in Qwik Insights, but I think it will expand to any aspect of optimization in our future.
I have to admit my experience with AI is rather limited. I'm very much a mechanical kind of person. I've been always looking at like specific interactions. So for me, obviously, to this date, AI hasn't made a huge impact on the other side assist tools. But I do wonder, just because of the type of technology that we've been building, a lot of the gap closing between server and client, due to other elements as well, that if AI could, I mean, we've seen a bit of it with like people generating like websites and components from it, but like, I guess I'm interested in seeing, because all these frameworks right now work on the server, spending an incredible amount of time looking at different serialization formats. That's like React server components, all the different like use server and all the server functions, Qwik's closure extraction. I've been trying to think, are we getting to a point where AI can actually infect the end user user experience? Like talk about actually the on the UX, like designer level, like real-time component generation being streamed through, like, because we have the ability to serialize all this stuff now, not just data, but components, promises, basically constructing in real time the interface that the end user wants as they interact with it. Now, I know that's really sci-fi, but
it's not that sci-fi, it's like a year from now.
Yeah, I know the last time I said that, because we made an April Fool's joke on Solid after React released the use hook, we're like, the create hook. And we're like, you just put create and then it'll make your app for you. And I kid you not, like 8 days after, it was April 9th, somebody from Builder, Steve, made a demo, and I'm like, oh, he just implemented it. So, yeah, you're right. This will happen sooner than I think. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting from a framework author's perspective trying to anticipate these things. I mean, a lot of times I look at improving the core mechanics, looking at the language that we use in terms of how we design intent. Because if we can, there's still that element of capturing intent, right? Yeah. You want to make sure, whether it's from the end user, whether from the developer, you have to know what they're intending, and the AI has to read that. So while I'm not sure what that completely looks like, that's why I often like looking at the similarities between different tools and looking at the common language there, because today maybe we only have ChatGPT, but what does it do? It processes languages. In a sense, the language of UI, I think, is something that's tangible, that people can look at. Yeah, you've already seen the carcinogization. If you look at React hooks, signals, ruins, these language level features are making all the frameworks look almost identical. We're getting to a point where I actually think this might turn into a language problem, and I think AI's ability to enhance from there becomes really interesting.
So on that thing that you said we would have, I gave a demo 2 days ago at a meetup of a Nuxt app built to be malleable, so to allow users to change it at runtime on the fly using natural language. And it's just a simple demo, but you can find it on my GitHub if you want to have a look. And it basically enables proof of concept, GraphQL schema, GraphQL query, app, and basically users interact with it and say, can I see it as a table? What if you just show me I could only find a Rick and Morty API. Originally it was an e-commerce website, but the GraphQL endpoint went down, and so I changed it. Rick and Morty was what I found. And so users could say things like, can I see the episodes, and like what kind of, can I have a list of episodes with the significant characters in them, and the app would change to be different. Or that you could ask for like different colors or a different theme. And this is the kind of thing that absolutely you can build today. And particularly if you're very careful about scoping what you expose, rather than letting them just change the entire app, then that's probably something that's you could even ship. But I mean, I don't know. I think the whole question is, this is a fun question, but it's not a answerable question, because AI is just, or what we are calling AI at the moment, it's just a whole sort of movement in a direction which is sheer possibility. We haven't yet figured out what the limits are going to be. We have ideas about what they might be, but one thing is for sure, it's not going to, we are all tool users. Like, we are craftspeople. We'd like to think we're artisans. When we build things and craft things, we're trying to achieve a result with tools that we've got. And this is one really powerful tool that we might be able to deploy and use. It should hopefully make our lives easier. We might be able to use it to make end users' lives easier, and that's fantastic. And the more ideas we have to do that, the better. It's not going to do anything like get rid of our jobs or fix everything magically for us. But
jQuery will still be here.
jQuery will be here till I die, I'm sure of that. It's,
there's a new version even, right?
Yeah.
So we won't get rid of it.
I'm good.
All right, great. Yeah, to catch on it, I also think AI, like, we talk about the future, right? That's why we can't necessarily answer everything in detail, but we see a direction. I think that's the shape of the direction and its various different branches as well is pretty clear here. And I liked all the input on that question. But there were two things I want to catch up on. The first one is, Ryan was mentioning signals, runes, and so on. And I was wondering, as most of you using signals, I know it's not that popular in Vue. I mean, we have refs, for example.
It's the same thing under...
Yeah, wait, exactly. But that's the point. They're same thing, but tiny bit different, implementation-wise. So the question is, there are efforts right now to standardize signals. And I was wondering what your thoughts are about the standardization process. Maybe some of you have been involved, seen that, and what you want to see outcome-wise for JavaScript ecosystem.
Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I am in that group. It's a tricky process, standardization, and it was something I was kind of torn with it initially, because I'm not going to lie, I usually never wait for anything to become standard before I do it. So like, it's always been a challenge. You know, I kind of like see something and then I just go for it and running full speed, and kind of slowing it down and figuring out how it works for everyone seems like a lot of work. But yeah, I mean, we've already, because of the adoption across the different frameworks, I think that there's a lot of potential when we can get to a point where we can have browser primitives, because like, yes, there's differences, but there's also an incredible amount of similarities. And like, some of the challenges that we've had over the years can actually be addressed with this kind of stuff. Like, people, like, we've had some version of signals in JavaScript at least since like 2010, like Knockout.js. Like, one of the complaints back then was, you know, things are erratic, and it's not a bad, it's not an unfair complaint, because they were. We didn't have a lot of the guarantees we have in systems today. But on the same side, it'd be great if you could debug. If you've ever gone in your console and hit like a promise, you can see how it continues. You can like see the stack before and after the promise resolves. Having that kind of ability come into for reactive would be huge, because right now that's obscured for the user. It'd be great to see like, hey, this code is running because this changed. Once you get to a point where data flow is part of the actual like design and part of the creation, it unlocks incredible things. We're just at the beginning of that. So having the official support seems very powerful and very important. Error traces, like there's just so many pieces when it becomes native that, you know, we can all leverage. That being said, this pipe dream where it collapses all the frameworks into a single framework, I don't see that being necessarily very possible. I mean, trying to bring certain elements directly into the DOM or whatever, it makes it very challenging, because there are opinions. People care about the templating. So I don't see it just erasing that, but if we can find those common building blocks, like there's just so much potential there.
Yeah. It's death by committee most of the time, right? Like, these ideas never come to fruition. Just like observables, right, in the past, were like part of the reason I think they, you know, were introduced into the new Angular back in the day, was because they wanted to become a standard, right, in like the web API, but you know, it was blocked, and it was like, I also share Ryan's opinion of like, don't wait, just do it, and if it's good, people will use it, and then we end up with query selector natively, which is, you know, was the perfect solution, and it was like a small enough solution. Signals have constraints sometimes, you need to know other stuff, but they are a super powerful tool, and I think that's why most of the frameworks adopt them. as a core thing, and because, like Ryan said, they open up lots of possibilities. So I'm not that optimistic about any type of committee decision with lots of politics and all that stuff, but I'm super optimistic about Signals becoming a first-class citizens in all of the frameworks of the future and such.
To be fair, just so people are aware if they aren't, there's representation from all the major frameworks in that committee. We have members from Vue, we have Svelte, we have obviously Solid, Qwik, this goes in there. I'm going to forget, there's too many, I'm going to forget them, I already have. React guys are in there, like there's Ember even, you guys remember Ember? Yeah, yeah, so like there's a lot of prominent voices in there. Angular, what, Alex and Pavel, yeah, like, yeah. So I do think that in the past there's been some tension between frameworks and committees just because of things. They have pulled us all in, so I'm a little bit more optimistic than usual there, but.
I think otherwise, without everyone like giving opinions, it would be very difficult because they would always be like, hey, why did you involve us as a major part of the developer community? So I think also it's a very good thing that also that TC39 group, let's end this, it then said, hey, let's bring them all in. It might be a bit more difficult to find consensus, but at the end there's something everybody's happy about, and that's what all developers want to know.
But it's also worth saying that timescales just operate totally differently in framework land versus like TC39 land, and that's not a bad thing, because whole entire frameworks are born and die before a proposal might make it through. I mean, look at temporal, for example. It's taken a very long, but that's not a bad thing. Like this is a language that is going to be developing over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's hard to roll back once you made it a standard, right?
And the other thing is this isn't necessarily going to impact people a huge amount, except, I mean, it will make their lives better, but it's not like you're losing out in the interim, because this is going to be wrapped by frameworks anyway. So it's people were probably not going to be consuming this raw. This is probably going to be filtered down through other libraries and used under the hood by solid reactivity, I would guess, and Vue and so on. So I don't know, I think it's great. I think it's really fantastic that these are being considered to be part of JavaScript. Like I think that's really forward thinking, and I'm optimistic, and I think it would be great. But hey, I'm just naturally optimistic, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty agree with that, and yeah, I think that if we have like a kind of universal layer of the reactivity across framework, that would help a lot, because I think I create a library called vuejs, which is a composable library for Vue, and I mean, like to maintain like 200 composable is a lot of work for me. But imagine that every framework would need to do that, and that would be a lot of things. Like for me, it's like if I always thinking about like making something universal so it can serve more wider audience, and also we have more contributor, more open source things, like we can collaborate together. And if we're having the universal layer like this, we can do a lot more things. Like from the library can be shared, or like I'm also like very into developer experience, and I'm building the Nuxt dev tool. And we were thinking to build a dev tool for Vue's reactivity tracking to see when and how the different React signals being triggered. And I mean, if this is going to be a standard, and this reactivity system can be baked into the browsers, or like we can have a universal library to a very nice graphically inspector of how reactivity goes. So yeah, I'm pretty looking into that.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone said, and also it's not, so the signals, there are different representatives, could be hard to agree on the exact semantics of the signals library, but something that might be easier to agree on is how signals are used, and come up with a more ergonomic like syntax, let's say, in the browser, specifically for a signal-like primitive. So I guess there are different things that we could all agree on that would improve the developer experience for a reactivity, shared reactivity story.
Yeah, I would like to take advantage of this question to share something that I think is important for us all as different framework users and framework authors, and as a JavaScript community in general. is this notion of it's good to have different opinions. That's how, on diversity of thought, that's how better solutions get created, and not always to try and consolidate. Plus, keep in mind, and that's what I really, really love about, all the people here in the panel are, all the communities of these different frameworks are open. You guys from Vue and Vite and like writing tools that other frameworks could use and sharing the same layer, and the general attitude of these communities is not I'm in my little soccer team that I'm a fan of and I'm not using. It used to be, we used to come from a place where, back in the day, right, when you just, you're using Backbone, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think this is the right attitude as a JavaScript community members. In the end of the day, we're all one big JavaScript family, right? So I think keeping this attitude in mind, and it's okay to use this or this or this and have different opinions, but share those. I think this over a committee that have like politics and all that stuff baked in could lead to a more standardized solution between the framework authors, because I think, I can't speak for everyone, but I think at least the people here are on the same page of like, hey, let's figure it out on our own because we care about the web and JavaScript in general, not just our own box, right? So it's just a message of collaboration.
So nice to see that everybody's nodding there, and some people applauding. Lovely. No, I also can't add anything to that. I think it's also a good signal to everybody. Sorry for the word pun, not intended. Just
pun definitely intended.
Definitely.
No, I've been preparing that for days.
Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah.
I wish. Okay, you got me. No, it's really nice to see that message out here, because I think very often it's like, oh yeah, framework XYZ is better, but in the end we all want to build cool things. We're all creators, as was said before. And also that these panels like these are possible, and I hope there will be more in the future. It's really nice to see. So that's amazing. And coming from the working together on something for the whole community topic, we've seen lots of things that are more universally thought in the recent past, right? We've seen Vite, for example, come out saying, hey, let's cater all the frameworks, whoever want to. We can integrate. And now almost all the frameworks and meta frameworks are built on Vite. We've seen lots of other movements around that, saying not only across frameworks, but also across all the 14 plus runtimes of Node that we have right now. So things like UnJS, for example, it's also used under hood for Solid Start, for example, for analog as well, Nuxt. So I wonder, what do you think about these more universal and agnostic approaches? Because we all talk about different opinions are important. It's really good because it also drives innovation in a way, and competition, quote unquote, helps. But on the other hand, it's also nice to have like a universal layer, so frameworks and meta frameworks can like build on top of the same thing, like Vite, Nitro, and so on and so on.
For me, it's helped kind of, I actually show this in my talk, but I like looking at things in layers, because if you identify where you fit in the tree, you as the consumer, it's a lot easier, because it's funny, we have very different expectations of what we want out of the tools we use versus like what our customers expect out of us. So it's kind of funny where I sometimes feel like I have a double standard on that side. Maybe I'm a hypocrite, but like, while I complain about stuff taking longer below, I still innately are going to try and generalize stuff for the people above me. So it's like, I do think there's a certain amount of tension there. There's a certain truth to the fact that if you build specific solutions, they can be more optimized for the specific case. But on the other hand, we don't get I think the exercise of trying to generalize is how we discover where the real boundaries are, where the real primitives are, where we should explain things. These things shift over time too to make things a little bit more challenging, but I think it's important to go through the exercise. This is, again, why I spend so much time looking at lots of different solutions, lots of different frameworks, because it's only through that generalization I feel that you can actually understand the problem space enough to be able to model these things and find better ways to model these things. So even if in some cases those universal tools won't survive, or they'll be more optimized a certain way, or they'll lead to a certain thing taking over. Like, it's funny, like, example, like web components. they were something that were kind of thought like it would democratize it, make everyone be able to do it, and then we wouldn't need frameworks. But I actually think web components are probably responsible for making more JavaScript frameworks than any other thing they added to the browser. So like there's this weird opposite effect, right? Now that you can do it, everyone just goes and makes their next standard, the XKCD comic. So like these things always exist at the same time in balance. And I think that's a good thing. Of course, I'm never the person complaining about JavaScript fatigue. So, I mean, I'm not sure everyone feels this strongly as me, but I think, generally speaking, at least making the attempt to generalize is a good exercise to finding the best path forward.
Well done. That's it. I don't have anything to add. It's like a
I think we're probably all in favor of universal code. I will say that there's some interesting things that make different interpretations possible. So like the provider pattern is something you increasingly see, the provider or adapter. So when you're talking about deployment to different providers, or talking about, like Ryan gave an example of using unstorage in his talk, you can have different kinds of storage, KV, layer. Or if you think about like differences between Bun and Node in terms of how they access the file system, like you can imagine there are these different implementation details which can be abstracted away. And things like export maps allow you to do that at the sort of package level, where you can actually have an import that can point to a different file based on which JavaScript runtime is consuming it. So the Winter CG group, if you haven't come across them, they're definitely worth following. They're a collaboration of different runtimes, people interested in different runtimes, and there are keys that represent the different JavaScript runtimes, which are supported in, well, unofficially supported in export conditions in your package JSON, which allow the creation of an adapter layer for where you can't create something that's totally universal, like file system access, for example, but where you can actually expose code that works in the same way wherever it's consumed because of this provider pattern. I don't know how much that added, but that's definitely something that assists in this goal.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's to say that if we have one problem, and that can be multiple solutions to that problem, and people will have different opinion. And what I'm thinking is like this has to reach a certain point that if we like experiments is good, and we will find different trade-off. And at some points, like we might agree like a general solution or a general direction to something, and so that we can actually move to a higher level problem to solve. And so that if you see an example, like I think Vite initial branding itself as an opinionated build tool or something, but now like everybody is happy with that because like I think they still say some opinion, but people saying that the opinion is good. And because like we have the built-in TypeScript support, and we do post CSS for you, and we do a lot of things. And that makes sense because we basically stand on the shoulder of the past generation of tool. Like for example, like Webpack make a lot of innovations, and people are trying different stuff. And then it figure out that probably those are things that we commonly needed, and we bundle it into a single foundation that then we can move to another problem to solve. So now we are kind of discussing about higher level framework and how we should do it. And while that's, yeah, I think it's just people with different opinion to experiment things. And while that's, I think it's always happened, but I think it may happen at different levels as the framework or the ecosystem grows, evolves.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's what I also wanted to say.
You stole his point.
It's
Sorry.
it's great that we can, when we find something that works for everyone, we can focus on building like more complex things and share the foundation. That's great. And also, I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. We either like share like the same thing or like build competitive, like competing solutions, because we can revisit some of these decisions over time as well. If we see that something could be optimized in the future, we can just build an alternative solution. We can build an alternative solution and things will work. We can improve it. Like we can see that in the Node ecosystem. We have Dino now too. We revisited this shared layer. And another thing also, this helps with maintainability as well. I'm thinking about, let's say, prettier uses the Angular template parser to parse HTML and to format code. That's pretty cool. They don't have to maintain their own HTML parser. We have a team that maintains our compiler, and Prettier can just depend on it. Pretty convenient. Same with Angular using Vite right now. We don't have to maintain our own orchestration system. It's great.
Yeah, and sorry to be the Care Bear here on the fluffy lovey-dovey, but that's the point that I tried to make before, where we're talking about evolution, right? Always for evolution to happen, we need to experiment and then consolidate, and like Anthony said, move to the next thing or the above layer and such. But in order for that to happen, we need to be humble and we need to be sharing is caring attitude. The attitude is more important for our advancement or how fast we can go in this evolution path than the trying to be the smartest person in the room or clinging to your idea or thing and thinking about the better of everybody. But it's like trying to identify the evolution and where things are going and what can I drop now and what can I focus on later. Just to add the fluffy lovey-dovey thing.
But I think it's very important because I've talked about it before a little bit as well with some people. We're like, okay, it's so nice if you have a super smart solution, but if you can't bring it across and we welcome the community because you don't have the attitude for that, then yeah, people won't notice, people won't see. So there are lots of points of not only having a good solution, but also being able to share it with the people. And then it starts with, okay, hey, I work on a cool thing here. And you might find more people being interested in that, working with you together, build up a team. And then we start at being not only a one-man project, but a bigger thing, a community. And this is what helps growing projects, frameworks, libraries, open source in general. Like, it's not only about the smart hats behind it, right? It's in the end about the whole community and building that up as well.
Yeah, that's the spirit of open source, basically,
Exactly.
in the end of the day.
And if you haven't contributed yet, that's your chance. Any of the frameworks and libraries, that's an option.
Yep.
Right? Documentation, no code, and so on and so on. Nevertheless, we don't have that much time left, unfortunately. We have roughly 10 more minutes. And I wanna go to quick questions. We talk about the future of frontend, and that involves JavaScript, of course. Hopefully for the next few years, right? I was wondering if you have any features in JavaScript that might be on the rise, like stage 0, 1, 2, 3 proposals where you're like, hey, that would be cool. Or maybe something that you had in mind, like, hey, it would be nice if that would be part of the standards. And no, signals don't count. So we talked about that already. So if you have something where you're like, hey, I'd be super excited to see that, maybe use case or like why you're excited about that, that's your time to share that.
Let's start from there because we always start here.
Yeah, sure. Let's start over there.
Oh, I was ready to be last, so I thought I have more time to think.
Sorry. I can start if you want to give you
whoever wants to first, yeah.
Sure, go ahead, Tal.
Okay. So I've been mostly living in a cave now and thinking about a lot about the evolution and how things. I'm not well versed in the what's in level 3 or what's about to be released and such. But what I would love to see a future where at least from our point of view in Qwik is we call it it's a metaphor like JavaScript streaming, but the underlying thing here is the ability to chunk up your code into the function level and have it being smartly streamed or refactored or collected, like statistically collected or stuff like that. If that was a native in the browser, or because it will shift our whole thing because everything become async now, right? And you point to a closure or a scope level variable and you're crossing a boundary. So it's changing a bit the mentality. But I would love to see that becoming something more used, and that way other frameworks could use it as well. But I don't know how it's possible, but that's the problem domain that we are looking into. So yeah.
Very interesting one, yeah. I would also like to see that actually. That would be great.
Obviously, Tailwind CSS built into the browser would be ideal.
Oh, I see
Very
some
spicy.
fans over there. Yeah, yeah. Adam, if you're watching that, you know, that's your chance.
I'm interested, actually, more seriously, I'm really looking forward to types as comments. That will be even just a nice developer experience thing that I can copy and paste some TypeScript code and run it in the browser console. That will feel nice. I think, was it Firefox that just unflagged CSS nesting support today?
Oh.
Someone unflagged CSS nesting support.
Lovely.
I haven't, but
Yeah.
like that's also that's a really nice new feature that's coming or has come. But in general, I'm quite content with what is available in the browser tooling.
Yeah.
I guess I'm excited what we're going to see happening on the edge, because this seems to be like a very helpful thing. I'm thinking we are building solutions for business problems that people have. That's what is driving web development to a big extent. Like, people started building large web applications. That's why we had to deal with deferred code loading, with lazy loading and dynamic imports. And I see just these applications becoming even more immersive and larger. So I guess code loading and work on the edge would be something that I'll be really curious to follow.
Cool.
If I could throw one more in, async context. How can I not mention that?
Everybody like, yeah.
Were you also thinking,
Yeah.
like basically being able to track across async boundaries, a sort of, you can actually store data and retrieve it, and it enables incredible things. So for example, in Vue, so maybe too specific, and Ryan probably has a better example, but if you're rendering something synchronously, you can set a context, for example, and you just retrieve it. Everything is sort of single-threaded. But the moment you have an async boundary, you can now have, there's a bit of code that's being run, and then a bit of code from maybe another request that's being run, and then a bit of code from a different, like these things are out of order. And so it becomes much more difficult, for example, to have any kind of global state, because you're constantly having to sort of, oh, I better unset it, and now I'll reset it for this next bit of code which is running in that context. But then the moment this bit of code which is from a fresh request, am I making any sense? Like it becomes very problematic for lots of reasons. And even on the client side, in the browser, for example, it can be more difficult to track what initiated a promise that is only now resolving. And you can't necessarily, actually there's been some real good work in DevTools to enable you to trace back a lot better, but it is still possible. But on the server, we now have support for async local storage in Node and Node 20?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of the version.
But
No, so async local storage, which is not the, like, that one's been in Node for a long time.
that's true. Sorry, I mean,
But now, as of this year,
tagging,
we got
async
support
stack
of
tagging
it in Cloudflare runtime, I'm forgetting the other, Dino. Basically, most runtimes now support a version of it, except not in the browser. So we're seeing a lot of meta frameworks moving into it, because pulling the request out inside of our fancy server functions and stuff is actually a huge problem, and this is what lets it being transparent. So async context, like an official spec for it, would be amazing.
yeah.
I actually had one more myself, or two more. I'm really interested in the import module stuff, import meta and inline modules. Again, these features people probably aren't like reaching for every day, but doing stuff like server functions, server components, all these things, kind of weaving in workers. We're getting to a point now where they're working on solutions even to the browser, into the spec, that actually can let these things be co-located. It'd be interesting. Maybe we won't need use server or use client. It could actually just be part of the actual module spec.
Yeah, that exactly the discussion that we had before about, there's a lot of innovation happening with the server components, React server components, and we talked about the philosophy of automatic optimization versus manual optimization, and it seems like adding a decision point for the developer to decide where this is a server component or this is a client component is on the UX side is better because then you could like be fine-grained about stuff, but on the developer experience side, it's more challenging because then you need to learn more context and then add more decision point. So I really want a future, and we had this in the Qwik Heroes Discord chat about like, should we add it to Qwik or something like that? But then it's like taking us outside of the philosophy of automatic optimization, right? So I really wish for the future, and we didn't like solve it yet, but for all the frameworks to have like the framework decide for you whether it's a server component or a client component, and optimize. I know that Ryan thinks it's not possible, but we'll see. You know.
That's the future of the front end, right?
Yeah.
And the back end way too.
Yeah.
Any other features?
Yeah. I'm actually a little bit hesitated about my take because I'm probably going to pivot. I pretty much agree of like what you said, but like while we were discussing about web, I'm always thinking about a little bit about like off the web. It's like you must be travel from all of where. Like if you take a plane, you must experience the frustrating when with no network or very low network. So what I'm thinking is I would like to see more apps like has the local first philosophy. I'm not so sure if it's a application level thing or it's an infrastructure thing, but I think there's a lot of things that we haven't figured out yet. So it's probably worth to have some effort from the infrastructure level. But if we are able to, that's also like why I'm a little bit frustrated about the PWA stuff. But we are not going to back to discuss about it. But so we would like to see more about like how we should do about more efficient local first, or like if we can have a local first as a default of our web application things or something. So I'm also like looking forward to that to see if we could have actually a better user experience.
Amazing. Okay. It's almost time. We have one last question. Remember, I made a joke in the beginning saying, yeah, we'll build our super framework here on stage. It's time to do that. It's a very quick one, so each of you has to pick
quick one. Okay. So.
Oh.
Say what I.
Okay. Good one. Good one. So each of you has to pick one feature for framework that should go in, just one, and then we have it. Then we'll build it. Very simple.
Wow, you have like an hour?
we have exactly 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding. Let's go.
Fine-grained rendering.
Provider agnostic deployment.
JavaScript streaming, you know.
Or I'll be like mature and boring, stability and reliability.
I don't know, plugin system?
Plugin system. Here we have it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the future of the front end. Give a warm round of applause to our panelists here. Thanks a lot for sticking. And if you have any more questions, hit these guys up right over there. Thank you, everybody.